The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the Force Center podcast feed, and this particular episode is The Mandalorian Report.
Welcome to the show. Have fun. Come with you.
Secretions. I am Joseph Scrimshaw, and the person who always makes some kind of noise after I say The Mandalorian Report is Ken Napzok. Traditionally, it had been music, but I really love that it is now segueing into a little bit of dialogue mood sample from the show itself.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I guess I could do a sound. Boo, 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 boo. There you go.
There you go. The big news flash of Chapter 22 of The Mandalorian is Jack Black in space. We are going to get into it all of the strong and complicated feelings floating out there in the galaxy. But we do want to do a quick plug. We want to let you know that we are pushing our Patreon. Hey, why couch it in any delicate language? We are encouraging people to join us on Patreon. We have realized that that is our strongest means of support in a constantly shifting digital content environment. We offer a lot, I think. We have a great fun space on our Discord for fans to discuss Star Wars in a positive way. They can disagree, but they keep it friendly. It's great. We're doing an Indiana Jones podcast in the build up to Dial of Destiny that right now is available just on Patreon. And we're building to a new goal of Jennifer Landa doing a series of YouTube shows that is basically NPR on Star Wars. So if any of that is of any interest to you, by all means, check out patreon.com/forcecenter. And if it doesn't work for you in any way, thank you for listening or watching anyway. Other bit of quick business here, Ken, is to let people know that we are on our way to Star Wars Celebration. Perhaps you can hear it in our voices that we're recording even earlier in the morning. I apologize for the coffee slurping sounds you will hear. So some schedule bumps coming up. In particular, the next episode of The Mandalorian, Ken and I will both be in Europe. We'll be having the 8 a.m. experience, watching it over there. We will be traveling in different places at that point, so we won't be able to record. So our next Mandalorian report is going to be several days later. Our review, discussion, analysis of Chapter 23 of The Mandalorian will be out on Sunday, April 16th. Ken, did I miss anything?
No, you did not. It's going to be fun. It's a fun stress I'm experiencing right now to get on out of here. Can't wait. And I do want to highlight one thing on the Patreon page. We have that merch level, right? There's some merch options there. Check out the level if that suits your needs and you're able to do it. Great. I got some messages from some people really excited. Brian Tiller and Paul Denuzio DM'd me on Discord. They're both they got notifications that they're getting merch. And they're excited. They're some of the first to get it automatic through Patreon. So excited to share that. So is it an upsell on my part? Yeah, I used to work in a movie theater. You want a large popcorn? I'll get you a large popcorn. But seriously, we, like Joseph said, we really appreciate the support in this changing landscape. And it was fun to get those messages.
That's really great to hear about the merch because honestly, we kind of reworked everything. So if you join at a specific level, you get a one-time fun thing so we can leave most of the rewards open to everybody so we can really grow the community and we're not sort of like walling things off.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's get into it. We are discussing Chapter 22 of The Mandalorian, Guns for Hire, written by Jon Favreau, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. About 40 minutes of actual storytelling. We always like to talk about our experience of watching. Ken, did you stay up? Did you have the midnight experience? How did it dovetail with your preparation for Star Wars Celebration? What happened to you last night?
Well, I tell you, emergency trip to the pharmacy, emergency trip to Target because I wanted a new pair of jeans. You can't leave without a new pair of jeans, all the stuff. And then I decided, I'm going to miss a game stream this week. I need some energy. I'm going to game stream on YouTube. So I played Fortnite. Our buddy Ken Plume joined me. A lot of people in the crowd watch him. And we did a countdown to Mando. So it might have been silly of me because I might have lost some time packing that I could have packed. But so I came crashing into the couch about 11:55 to watch this episode. But I had a lot of good energy and good vibes. And that was a good mix. This episode we're going to get into, I just found me in the right vibe. It just hit me right where I was, loopy. And I think it helped.
That is really great. I also sat down for my traditional midnight experience with a whiskey and some action figure friends. I almost just set out every action figure I have of anybody who has ever appeared in The Mandalorian because I don't know what's coming next. But Grogu and Din watched with me. I was a little affected by the fact, honestly, that I've spent the entire day feverishly packing for Celebration, prepping for Celebration, trying to complete other life tasks for other parts of my life. And there is a little bit of like, hey, Star Wars, you're interrupting me from Star Warsing. I'm trying to Star Wars, but now I got to Star Wars, which is a wonderful, wonderful problem to have. But I just want to be honest about it, that it does, affect me a little bit, So when I watched it at midnight, I definitely enjoyed it, but I was just sort of like exhausted and overwhelmed. And then it is a different episode. It is a fun, loopy, deep episode. So when I got up again to rewatch it, to really kind of pour through notes, I really felt like I got on its wavelength and I enjoyed it far, far more this morning. I guess the lesson is play Fortnite before Celebration to get yourself in the right mood for fun and pew, pew, pew. So that was a little bit of my journey. Let's get into our overall reactions. How did you feel about it? Did you love it? Is it just I like this one? Did you struggle with it? Do you fully embrace it, wrapped in 4 Dexter Jetster arms? Where'd you go?
Where do I go with this? I'm going to start here, Joseph. You said it was written by Jon Favreau. I'm convinced this was written by George Lucas. I think this is what George Lucas's Episode 7 would look like. I think this is closer to it. I think this is what Cloud City would have looked like if he had technology and money at the time. I really believe that. I'm about 30% joking, but I really think that the spirit of this is more George than anything we've seen in the last few years. I will die on that hill. And I think because of that, and this reminded me of a 1978 Marvel Star Wars comic. And so therefore I loved it. I really got to tell you I love it. I don't want to be like I'm crossing my arms in a fun way and contrarian because I know I've already seen the discourse. Even in our own Discord, there's a lot of people not happy with this episode. A lot of people not getting this episode. There's a lot of people we know and love and respect out there tweeting things. That's just not for them. And guess what? That's the right answer, right? We always say that. That's the right answer for you. There's a moment in this episode when we got the opening, which is I was like, okay, curious. And then when they're heading to Plaisir 15 and there's that fanfare ringtone, and I thought maybe it was like a Nokia phone, like Bo-Katan had a Nokia. That to me, I'm not joking. This is different. This is taking me somewhere else. And I just got the vibe. This doesn't mean, again, if anyone's going to come at it's too weird, it's too bonkers. I'm not even here to fight or debate you on it. I think that's right for you. What's right for me is I don't know. I don't know. It was like watching season 2 of the Clone Wars in live action. And I liked it. Sorry, I'm apologizing, but I liked it a lot.
Yeah. I understand why some people wouldn't enjoy it or why some people would even go, I get everything that's going on, but I didn't like it as much as this episode or this other Star Wars show. I think Star Wars contains multitudes, and to me, it's all about the hat you're wearing, right? If you're like, I like this kind of Star Wars, and everything else is a little bit of a struggle for me, so be it. But I cannot agree with you more about the way that you're describing it. If you want to die on this is a George Lucas episode hill, I will be up there. we can have our discourse flamethrowers ready to go, standing back to back on that hill. This is the most George Lucas and prequel episode in a long time. And I think what I mean by that is some of the tone, the embracing of cool fighting, but also silly bonkers, but a real interest in world building, a real interest in the politics. What do different societies believe and why? Get in there and wrestle for yourself of what's the morality of this, who is right and why, and just the utter joy of politics, world building, and yes, sometimes characters just standing there and saying exposition fairly blatantly. I understand that might be a bump for some people. That is a part of Star Wars, and it always has been. And it even had a little bit of that tone. So I think it's very George Lucas it is very Clone Wars in particular. I thought that, and then I immediately saw on social media after I wrote down my notes, a lot of people also kind of comparing it to Clone Wars. And I think it's because this episode is one that really sort of embraces all parts of the beast of Star Wars, right? The mix of action, comedy, intrigue. This was a detective episode. This reminded me of Detective Kenobi, in Attack the Clones. With the the fun, weird tentacle moment and the real emphasis on romance between the Corn and the Moncala, but also between the Duchess and Captain Bombardier. There's a real focus on romance and romantic love. It was that kind of classic Star Wars, like, hey, if you were around in the 20s and 30s and you went to the dime store and there are all these pulp novels, and some were westerns, some were weird space creatures, some were just people kissing, and you mash them together and you come out with this weird thing that is Star Wars. So I think there's all that going on. But then here's I want to touch on the funky cell phone.
Yes.
I think that there is multiple, parts of Star Wars, like I was just talking about, that we talk about often. But there's also this real direct tension between the cool and the badass, the Vader and the Boba Fett and the Maul and the Luke is in pain. What is he going to do? Han Solo is frozen carbonite versus the bonkers, the silly, the 3PO pratfall jokes, the Jar Jar stepping and poo poo, there's a real tension between those. There always has been. I think Bryce Dallas Howard is always interested in playing with those. They're obviously in the scripts that Jon Favreau gives her. But Chapter 5 of Book of Boba Fett, Return of the Mandalorian, was almost a direct acknowledgement of this, where the first half was grim, cool Star Wars on a space station where Mandalorians fight for honor. And then, a half an hour of Pelimoto Dayton Jawa jokes while convincing Din to find joy, right? So I think there's a specific sort of Bryce Dallas Howard interest in navigating the extremes of Star Wars. And I think that was once again, like in Chapter 5 of Book of Boba Fett, a purpose-driven choice. I think, to me, that's what that funky cell phone tone was about. You got Din and Bo-Katan kind of holding down the cool and the badass. They're warriors. Can they bring Mandalore together? Who will wield the Darksaber? Who will ride the Mythosaur? Will the armor try to kill them both? They're on a mission, and they're in that vibe, in that look, and that cell phone is like, surprise. Purposeful tonal shift, because then they are entering a world that isn't just silly and wacky as a side thing. It's a part of the story that this is a gorgeous, lighthearted paradise, and they are entering it. So I feel like if people struggle with the contrast, or if they don't like the sillier side or the more bonkers side of Star Wars, fair enough. But I think maybe try to engage with the episode as something that is truly talking about that divide and playing with it.
It pulls you in. There's the key line, the first we hear from Captain Bombardier is, join us, come, it's a party. Now, there's a lot of serious things in this episode, as we find out, the politics of it all, what it means. But I think there's a vibe to it there. And I'll say, as much as I love this episode, I don't want anyone to think that means this is a top 5 rewatch for me, right? Like that doesn't mean it. And I think you said it earlier too. I've already seen some people totally get what's going on, totally get the themes. I watch these things, I pick up on it. Just not my favorite. I still think that works, and even maybe works for me. I don't go to this kind of Star Wars first on a list, but I think you're right. It's a big mashup of it. But I think I met it where it wanted me to go. I wanted to have that party. I wanted secretions. And to those listening who are just shaking their heads going, it's not for me. Again, I'm never here to change your mind. Never here to change your mind. But I think, Joseph, you're right. Go on this journey with this episode. You might see it differently.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to hopefully, share what we experienced, open some potential doors. And then if anybody wants to walk through them themselves, it's not a better room. It's just a different room. Yeah. So for me, there's that real tension between the dark and the cool, and the light and the fun and the silly. But what really spoke to me when I watched it, and spoke to me even more this morning and elevated it to more of a rewatch episode for me, is the commitment to world building. That's always been a favorite thing for me on Star Wars rewatches. Just watching those little moments where there's some kind of different technology, or the droid does this in a different way, or you see, like, I remember one of the times watching Phantom Menace and noticing that there were little houses built into into Beggar's Canyon. And like, who lives there? What's all that about? Like, those little details are always fun for me. But I think another way into enjoying this episode, if you want to enjoy it more, is all those details of world building and cultural perspective are not only is the episode rich with them, everything from the tank chair to droid rights to droid bars to government structures to Ugnaught haircuts. It is rich with details, but the details of the culture are also the point. We talked a lot about the Bad Batch partially being a tour of the galaxy just as the Empire brings the crushing boot of tyranny down. The Mandalorian is really morphing into a show that is a tour of the galaxy in the early days of the New Republic. How are different cultures changing and adapting? That's what this episode is about in a large way. And to me, if you sat down and said, I'm not watching this to see how far Din's story progresses, and I think it progresses. I'm not necessarily watching this for super cool action. I'm watching this with the one question in my mind of, how do different cultures change and adapt? What are the best structures of society? If you watch it with that question on your mind, I think the episode has a lot to offer. And I certainly understand if somebody's like, that sounds like homework, and I don't want to watch it that way. Yeah, that's where I found a ton of joy and surprise and fun and rewatchability in the episode myself.
Yeah, right there with you on that. Some big themes to talk about. But from and there's some castings in here that I know some people have already seen. It takes me out. That might just come down to taste. I'm a longtime Jack Black fan, so I just was thrilled by it. I am familiar with Lizzo, but just having her there, her character, I thought was just the design of her outfits, everything about it was so Star Wars, and just love seeing her. And I think she represented the Grogu of it all. It was all there. And Christopher Lloyd, man, he's a legend from Taxi on for me. Like, it was fun to see it, but I think I've seen that too. Some of the stuff took me out. Again, taste thing, totally get it, because there's been other times I've experienced that. I get it, I get it. But let's meet these characters at this party and find out.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that, and I think I'm like somewhere in between. Of what I think would help me is if they said their space Star Wars character names immediately, so I didn't have to spend half the episode going, Space Lizzo has a good point. And I think I agree with Space Captain Jack Black, They do say their names relatively quickly, but like for me, that was it helps me sink into the character if I don't have to think of them as Space Lizzo and Space Jack Black.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Even my notes, it wasn't until this morning where I was like, oh, she's saying Captain Bombardier, because I had turned on the subtitles finally. It's like, all right, I will erase Jack Black from my notes.
Yep. I did the same thing, the exact same journey. Final big picture thought, and I think we'll get into it as we discuss the big ideas. I also just don't feel like this episode is like why did we pit stop here? The only thing that really moves the story forward is the Mandalorian conflict at the end with the Darksaber. I understand, again, from like a nuts and bolts plot perspective. Yep, that's what happens to move the big picture story forward. But I think this show and this season in particular keeps dealing in moving things forward on a thematic level. And I think Din and Bo taking a tour of all of these different cultures and societies struggling to work together and be understood by one another continues to raise this big question of what will the Mandalorian culture be? And in particular, if they get to be at peace, what the hell kind of culture is that for Mandalorians if they don't have anyone to fight? I feel the episode raising that question by them seeing all these other perspectives.
Absolutely. I think that it's a great way to segue into some of the big stakes and themes.
Yeah, let's do it. So for you, how did you break it down? What big ideas were at play in this episode for you?
I want to start actually kind of where you picked off, because I picked up or left off. I will pick up. And are we on that flight yet? I think I've seen too. We've discussed this even. You and I've discussed this. There's some clip outs and Q&A stuff and Q&A episode last week of what is season 3 of The Mandalorian about. And I really, really believe it's pretty focused. I really do. I would fight back against a little bit of the it's an unfocused season. It's about reestablishing Mandalore and not just the planet, a building, a house, culture and cultures. And the ongoing debate of who is a Mandalorian, what is a Mandalorian? He doesn't even have Mandalorian blood. No, he took the vow. That's what we do. All that stuff is constantly at play. And this was an episode. Again, this might be something you got and maybe you didn't need it and you wanted it told in a different way. I could totally see that. But I think this episode is a journey through that to the point where one of my favorite moments is they're in the Hyperloop car, which I loved. And they're heading to Axe Woves and company. And what are you going to do? I'll find out when I get there. To me means she's it's not that she's unsure. I think she's open-minded to what the situation needs. What do they need? What do I need to do? And what have I learned on this journey through this planet so far was how I took it. And to me, that is, so this Darksaber moment, this, clerical error type of getting it type of thing we'll talk about later. I enjoyed it, but I understand some questions about it. But there's also been some people who had predicted it. One of our listeners, I think, tweeted us back on March 9th, and he highlighted this morning. I think Ryan is his name. It was like, look, hey, she kind of won it from the spider monster. All that stuff's at play. But to get there, you go on this journey that is about how you move forward. We keep touching on it. This is what this episode is about. The convert now seems to be the galaxy. And here's this society that seems to have found a way forward. There's all these things that play under that how you move forward headline to me. Of communication, bridging gaps, cultures coming together. Love, I say, driving you forward. And everyone, I could run down the list, but let's move on the conversation. But everyone here shows an example of, I was this, but I'm doing this. You can communicate this way to them. This is the best way to do it. Meeting the needs of the people, giving people the chance, giving the droids, the droid bar was a great scene of just like, hey, I can hear you and I'd like to help. Give me a chance. All running up against very clearly. I'm giving this overview of it. I understand, but Christopher Lloyd's Commissioner Hellgate completely being this wall to progress, right? And holding on. It's so what's at play in every episode. But this, to me, as we head towards the final two of this season, was kind of like this final, dare I say, lesson for Bo-Katan, Din Djarin, and more. I think there's obviously more to learn. Characters learn things in every episode. I know that. But in a season, so much about change. In a series, so much about change and how you're reprogrammed and how you're rehabilitated. This is a final... your final project, your final paper for class before you figure out actually how to do this.
No, I really agree with you. I think there's some great stuff that I'll want to talk about of sort of lessons of leadership. And I think there is the great, there's almost a presentation to me of Din and Bo-Katan are strongest together. And Bo-Katan makes that argument consistently. That Mandalorians are stronger together. It's great to see her triumphantly sort of return to that. But they both have their stumble of she doesn't get Ugnaughts. Ugh, gross, Yeah. And he still can't quite trust droids, right? But they get through it together. They kind of take turns making better leadership choices. So I think there's a lot there to discuss. I love that you're touching on that. But I definitely want to dive into the overall theme in this season of change, who wants change, what kind of change is being made. I think it's really great that you described it as blocking progress. I thought this whole season we've really got different visions of change, of who wants it, who's holding it back, who tries to change and falls back into their old ways. This episode, I felt like there was a real highlight on change, particularly in the shadow of trauma, which is the kind of change that is happening. This episode was yet another society trying to find a way forward in more fear of individuals and cultures slipping back into the old ways. And it was in the shadow of the trauma of the Galactic Civil War. But, not just a fun canon mention, it's really important that it is still bearing the scar of the Clone Wars. And in the grand scheme of things, right, a republic that's basically been at peace, hey, some bumps for 1,000 years. And then this galaxy-wide Clone War, and there's no chance to heal or discuss the trauma from that because you're immediately thrust into a tyranny and then another revolution, right? And so they're coming out of decades of trauma. Kind of the whole galaxy is sort of poking their head out of a bunker going, can we even try to have good things? And how do we define good things? I thought Duchess Lizzo's line about her husband, sure, he's made some mistakes in the past, but who among us has not? Is there no room for a little bit of forgiveness in a galaxy so vast? I thought that was a key statement to this season of Mandalorian, this episode in particular. That idea of, it's a very Star Wars idea of like, it goes to Luke saying, hey, maybe there's a possibility that Anakin is still in there, and maybe my true father will make a better choice, right? This idea of, can you be strong enough? Can you be brave enough to try to trust, to deal with the fear of trying that? And I think there's a lot of that going on in this episode. I want to get into not Christopher, not Space Christopher Lloyd. He has a name, and it's Commissioner Hellgate. A damn cool name. Want to get into a little bit of Commissioner Hellgate, but I also want to pause and give you the talking hammer back to see if you have any general thoughts.
We now officially need the Force Center hammer. Maybe that'll be some merch we can sell later on, or just have pass virtually. One of the things I love that you said is this isn't just a season of like, hey, y'all want to change? Cool, we want to change. Stuff has happened. Things have happened. And I can pull that out and attach it to not only my own life, but I think us of, I don't know, the last 3-4 years, things have happened. We've been frayed at the seams. You're looking here at the United States of America, the rest of the world sells some stuff too. We all have it. And there's still things in our collective past that we're trying to get through or try to understand better and trying to find the best way forward. And yes, some people have some strong opinions on how to do that. And you could have those real world debates, or you could just, do a dart to the chest and say politics like Bo-Katan. That could move you forward real fast too, which is a moment I absolutely love. But yeah, there's a reason for this change. And there's a reason that everyone's going, hey, we got to look at the best way forward. The Mandalorians are trying to rebuild from absolute annihilation and destruction. I enjoyed too in the preview for the episode and the look back. I mean, it highlights what Din said. What do the Mandos stand for? What do we stand for? We're scattered. They're scattered, and so there's a reason. If we're going to rebuild this, it isn't like that's why I said you don't just rebuild Sundari City and move back in. It's beyond that. So beyond that, and to find this society that exactly right that used to have just be royals. Now there's elected people, and it just happens they elected the royals. But Jack Black was an imperial, but changed and moved forward and is committed to that. There was no turn, right? Which is one of the reasons I enjoyed Jack Black in this role. And I love his beard. It's a beard goal for me. But there was no dark shadow behind his eyes. This wasn't, Elia Kane, who's this wonderful character I want to see more of and develop that plotline. But like, you know what I mean? Like he was like, no, I did some things and I've changed. I found love and I want to move forward because we need to, or else we're just going to be stuck in the cycle. And I think that's really important that you highlighted that the change comes from trauma and there's a reason for it.
Yeah, and he's not even Pershing, right? Kane's like a true believer who lies that there's even a possibility of change. There's no possibility of change. Pershing kind of wanted to change, but found it easier to slip back into the old ways, you know?
Right.
And I totally agree with you with Captain Bombardier. I wonder if, like Mace Windu requesting a purple lightsaber. Jack Black is like, I might need my name to sound like a thing I would say in a movie.
Yes.
I want my name to be Bombardier. Yeah, so I think you're spot on. I think in the big picture, this episode is a win for change because we've seen, Navarro City struggling to move forward. The pirates want to drag it back, right? We saw the entire Convert episode, which is about people falling back. The Mandalorians are continuing to wonder about who they're going to be, how they're going to move forward. I think this idea of retaking Mandalore, I don't think that's just about the planet. I mean, I think that means like retaking the culture of Mandalore, being a nation, being a government. What is that going to be? They're still wrestling with it. They're still wondering if they can move forward. This episode is, we did it. We moved forward. We're committed to moving forward. It's bright and happy, which is why the episode feels and moves and looks the way it does, because they're a symbol of success. And there's this element that is trying to draw them back, and they're captured, and show a little bit of guilt, maybe even. Yeah. But I want to get into the heart of it, because I think that is like the big picture of what's going on Plaisir 15. But I think, to me, this is where the value is there's lots of really interesting details and questions if you want to sink into it. We've got the picture of who Commissioner Hellgate is, right? Some of it's quite straightforward. The droids were originally made, their original programming is violence. So he's going to drag them back to it, right? Yeah. He's going to drag us back to the Clone Wars. He does not want to move in the future. He seems to think that whatever is wrong with the society, in his view, is the fault of this imperial presence of a bombardier who seems to be just duly elected, following rules, having a great time, throwing parties. I'm sure he's got some sort of instrument, and it's only by the luck of a problem at the dinner party that he was not on the table playing a space lute. Seems like a good. Maybe we'll see him rock out with the Ren Fair band in the courtyard of Navarro. But I think Commissioner Hellgate is not just this. He doesn't just want to block progress, right? He wants to drag society back. He wants to keep the droids what they are. They're not friends. They don't have their own society. They're tools of violence controlled by himself. And he, I think, and I think the episode is offering you to ask questions and have opinions. And my opinion is, he is a picture of somebody who is causing the malady he's accusing society of. Saying this society is broken, this new way of doing things isn't working. I'm not actually seeing any of the problems that I believe this horrible society is going to lead to, so I'll cause them, And for me, that relates to very real world things. I think I'm going to stop myself short from making a specific example. But when you're told that, hey, there's this threat to our society that you should fear, and then it's not really manifesting, so then you try to get people to believe it's there, either through fakery or cause it yourself, and then go, look what the bad people have been telling you to be afraid of did, Yeah. So I think there's a lot to dig into his perception of what is wrong with society. Yeah. Is he at all correct that the reliance on droids is infantilizing the culture? Right. Or is he just afraid of that and making it happen?
Yeah, no. Yeah. I love that point of that's kind of there in that first scene. I was wondering, okay, what do they try to say about him? I didn't trust him immediately. Not because I've watched Back to the Future, but because I watched Roger Rabbit. I didn't trust him. But yeah, no, I love what you say. To just, direct in terms of Star Wars, these droids are dangerous. Look at what they're doing. But you're doing it. My point exactly. Like, he's just like, oh, yeah, okay, I got it. And I love you. Dragging back is a great way. And that there's no reason. And the question you're asking about is, all right, is that what is is that what's happening to the society? If I don't know, if you remove the droids, maybe those artists in your community would empty the trash. Who knows? Have you asked anybody? Or are you just sitting in this room, disconnected from it all, stewing in your own fear?
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, and again, this is an opinion, and I think that this is what's fun to engage with it, inform opinions. His brief political speech is fun in a canon way because he's a separatist, and separatist is a pejorative term. The name check of Count Dooku being a visionary is great, but for me, what it means is this is a person who now for decades has known what they're against. Mm-hmm. They're against the Republic. They're against the Empire. Now they're against the New Republic. Hellgate is a person who has an idea of an idealized society that exists in theory that Dooku spoke of, and in my opinion, as a Sith Lord, spoke of with utter manipulation, right? He maybe at one point Dooku had a vision of a grand society. We know that he did. In the Tales of the Jedi episodes, it's great that he does pick out actual dysfunction within the Jedi and within the Republic. It's not like he didn't have legitimate concerns, but whatever government structure he was selling to people to join the Confederacy of Independent Systems, it's never been torture tested. It's never been real. So Hellgate is a figure who is saying, I am against everything that has been practical and real and flawed, and I am for an imaginary thing that has never been torture tested by reality. And we as the audience know, at least some part of it is a horrific manipulation, because I do not believe that if everything went the way Dooku wanted it and the Clone Wars were won, he somehow killed Sidious, usurped power, he's still a Sith Lord. He wouldn't have just been like, and I had to do some bad things, but now here's my beautiful, perfect society. He would have been a tyrant. His name is Darth Tyrannus.
Yes. Yes. Oh, 100%. I always go to Christopher Lee's description of the character. He's immoral because he's all about his own power himself. And that would have played out easily. And Hellgate saying that it's very meta, but it's almost like, oh, he watched the second episode of Tales of the Jedi and turned it off after. He stopped it, which is part of, I think, the genius of the Dooku character. It's taken stuff that, you're right. Like you said, no one's saying this is perfect, and you could focus on that all day, all the things that are broken. But how do you move forward? How do you fix it? Which ties again to me in the big picture with the Mandos.
Yeah. So I'm really fascinated by Hellgate and his perspective, but I'm also really fascinated by Plazir 15. This is the part where it gets really George Lucas, because it gets into crunchy ideas of how should you organize a society, what works, what doesn't. It's not too heavy-handed, so I think it lets you come to conclusions. And this is the part for me, like, if you want to try to get on this episode's wavelength, dive into this, right? Plazir 15 is moving forward, trapped in the shadow of the Empire, trapped in the shadow of the Clone Wars. There's this picture to me where Plazir 15 has many thoughtful, well-intentioned rules, but they risk being caught in bureaucratic red tape, right? They risk being dysfunctional and unable to address problems. They have this sort of paradise society. They have a direct democracy, which means the people just vote, right? And they also have the rules of the New Republic that they have to abide by that causes them to disarm. So you can watch the episode and go, oh, this is a paradise that's not working because they don't have a standing military. They can't even have blasters. So they got to do this, right? So you could look at it as like, oh, it's being critiqued, right? But then you realize the more that it's discussed, they talk about how they've held direct democratic elections for the first time in our history. It is direct democracy. It's a pluralistic society, which means everybody's culture is welcome, and they're trying to figure out how everybody can accommodate one another's cultures and live together. They say that without a standing military, all of our resources go to growth and the people. So all that silly stuff, all the the really nice clean streets, the mass transit system that works really well,
Perfection.
the beautiful lawns. That's not just background. That's not just world building. That's perspective about where money could go if a lot of people were working together and they weren't constantly escalating military, right? We hear that the people there spend their days engaging in recreation, the arts, participating in direct democracy. That is a MF and George Lucas line. They have the time and the energy and the encouragement to go, this is the issue on the table. And because you're not being ground down to dirt from working 16 hours a day for horrible wages, you actually have the mental and emotional space to sit around and go, what do I think about this thing that's up for a vote? I do have time to research it. I do have time to discuss it. And we're kind of introduced to those ideas from the perspective of Hellgate, saying basically like, they're artsy infant babies who can't even make a salad for themselves. This is a broken society. But that's a perspective of somebody who is trying to break the society. And at the end of the day, I think everything that we actually see from that society is people working together and people building a real beautiful paradise. And I think it's coded that way in the way it looks, in the way the mass transit functions, in the fact that this is a happy victory where a society does get to move forward. That's my take. But I think there's lots of ways to take it and wrestle with it. What do you think about Plaisir 15? Like, do you want to move there? Do you agree with it politically? Where do you go?
I would. I think I would. I like a little more grime sometimes, city kid. But no. I really love what you're saying because this is the George Lucas of it all. While this is wild, bonkers fantasy at times, this episode is so sci-fi, right? I keep highlighting the pulp sci-fi of the 70s Marvel comics, but basically, to me, sci-fi is a look towards our own future through a story, right? Like, what could we be? What are we? That's why the Star Trek leans sci-fi, Star Wars leans fantasy. But I do think they all kind of hit at the same spots. Just maybe the dressing is different, and that's what I talked about, like with the Jack Black character. But I think overall, with Plaisir 15, there wasn't a shadow. There wasn't something around the dark corner. There wasn't. I was waiting. I think I might have been trained in past storytelling to Jack Black, Din and Bo-Katan walk out and Jack Black goes, all right, we've got them here. Like, there's none of that. This was what it was. It was functioning. And I love there was you highlighting the conversation of like, oh yeah, no, we have this restriction is on us because of this. I know I don't feel good about it, but I'm moving forward and we're doing okay. This is we're functioning. And I think that's important to look at it. It's a big statement from Star Wars. Absolutely is. And that's always been there. You talk about the tension of Star Wars often being about maybe no wars. And how do we get to that? But also, how do we, they have to hire these privateers. It's needed. It's a reality. So that's what we do. But, I thought there was just a lot of joy in that. A lot of joy. Yeah. You're also making me feel guilty because I do have a Roomba. And since I don't have to sleep anymore, I'm not putting my energy into other things as much.
Well, I mean, to me, that's what's fascinating because it's what a lot of science fiction was about in various moments of industrial revolution and technological revolution, right? It's always portrayed as, well, when we can automate a lot of our lives, what else are we going to have room for? Wow. And, I don't need to go into rabbit holes of opinions in essays about why technology hasn't left more room for the arts, for discussion, for community, for discovery. I think there's some reasons in our our own society that hasn't happened. But a lot of what's on display in Plaisir 15 is a legitimate discussion. It's a legitimate choice that we could make, right? That we could say, like, yep, we do need to have some sort of, defense league.
Yeah.
And it seems like Plaisir 15 would, if the New Republic wasn't like, hey, you're a brand new government with an ex-imperial as one of your leaders, so not right now.
Yeah.
Good for you. But there's nothing against them contracting. So it's not like they're like just like pie in the sky.
Yeah.
Like, loosey goosey. It's all fine. They're fine. They're saying like, yep, no, there can be problems. So we've hired them out. We have this problem now. We've come into this workaround. We're a pluralistic society that respects culture. Weapons are a part of your culture.
Right.
We're making it work. So they're not just like no weapons ever. Right. But they are invested in like, what gives us joy? And why can't we spend more time doing the things that are joyful and fill our souls? And the episode goes so far as to show us that everybody operating in society, the Ugnaughts like that. That's their culture, right? The droids like this. That's their culture. The episode goes out of its way to show this is a culture that is working in harmony, except for this problem that popped up. And the problem was caused by a guy who doesn't want this society.
Yeah. You one of those bumper sticker moments. You're highlighting the tension. This isn't this naive dream world. Plazir 15 is not. It's a lot of dreaming in it, but it is not blind to the realities of the galaxy. But Hellgate's convinced it is. To me, you know, it's like so. Therefore, stop it all. Press the stop button.
Yeah, and I think there is an element of comedy in it, an element of criticism. I don't think Hellgate is right at this point where he's like, oh, yeah, if I turn off the droid, the society will collapse. Like, will it? That's his perspective.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, worth asking ourselves in a thing that I think every generation yells at clouds every time something else gets automated. And people are like, well, what are you going to do when you don't remember your buddy's phone number? You can't just have him programmed in a phone. Like, what do you mean there's a compass on your phone? Don't kids learn about the North Star? Like, every time there's in evolution, there's a fear of society becoming infantilized to the new technology. So I think that's a fascinating thing to be like, how do you feel about that? Is he right in Plazir 15? Is there anything in our culture right now that's infantilizing us? These are the kind of questions that I think make this episode exciting.
Yeah, because they're all okay to ask, right? Like, I just lost a writing job to AI. I've got some questions.
You're going to go full Commissioner Hellgate, aren't you?
I'm going to press the button, Marty. Yes, absolutely. And I think you said earlier, this episode begs you to ask these kind of questions. Just again, going to Dooku is asking questions, and that to me that Obi-Wan Kenobi scene in Attack of the Clones is so much about him going, I'm going to tell you some truth because ain't no one else telling you this, and then you're invited to explore what that means and what it means for you, what's the best way forward, all those kind of things. So that's why I really did like this episode for this big picture stuff, not just Jack Black's beard, though that's 40% of why I liked it.
Yeah. So the beard was great and his attitude was great. Lots of great Jack Black moments if you could get past the fact that it was space Jack Black. Yeah. So apologies for spending as much time on Plazir 15, but I think to me that is the heart of the episode, and I think rewarding when you dig in. I do think there were lots of other episodes that supported this theme of change in the shape of in the shadow of trauma, right? This is great to see Din almost fall back into his droid hating ways, right? And see what happens when you rely on droids. He had this bias that blinded him to what was really going on. Bo-Katan, I don't know if this is trauma for her. I don't know if she's had bad Ugnaught experiences, but it was definitely judgy.
I was trying to think if there's anything in Clone Wars, because even in the Hyperloop car, she had this kind of like Ugnaughts, you know what I mean? And it's like, Ugnaughts.
She's down with the Ugg part of Ugnaughts for sure. Yeah, Ugnaughts. Ugnaughts. You know, the opening scene. I think in a lot of ways the narrative point is catching up with Axe Woes, his perspective on being a gun for hire, a mercenary, all that, which we can talk about. But that was, hey, culture is trying to move forward from the shadow of trauma. It's richer if you spent time with them in the Clone Wars and in lots of the publishing, but the Mon Cala and Quarren being at peace, Mon Cala itself having survived the Empire and seeing these star-crossed fish lovers, even if the execution doesn't work for you, the idea of it is, hey, here are, basically fish Romeo and Juliet trying to move forward, be together, and getting dragged back to the past of like, no, Mon Call and Quarren. It's fine if we live in peace, but you two aren't touching tendrils.
Fish and love and happen so fast. I love that opening more on second view. Because other than the Nokia cell phone, that's pretty. That opening scene is a pretty big indication of, hey, something's going to be a little different this episode. But it could go many ways from that. But the second viewing of it is really rewarding, and you highlighted why. When they're like, when the captain is saying like, we're at peace. Why would I? Why? I don't want to sacrifice that. Why would I do it? And she's hiding things, isn't that? But like, I thought it was a valuable line saying of like, no, we have moved forward. We're going to continue to move forward. Why would you stop that?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And one other thing I want to highlight on this theme is that the future of Mandalore is very much on the table. It is a part of this. It's an easy line to ignore. But this was an episode of The Mandalorian where we went back to a little bit of I'll do this for you if you do this for me, which is I think a lot of times how people in culture can work together. Like, how can we help one another? That will build a bond between us. If it isn't just totally mercenary, but more like, let's help each other. Din and Bo-Katan are helping with the track down the droid problem. But what is specifically offered to them is this line. In fact, Plaisir 15 would formally recognize Mandalore as a sovereign system and petition the New Republic to recognize it as such. That's an important line to me. And Bo-Katan looks at Din, and Din even kind of has a little nod like, yeah, that would help. And like, it's pretty political for old Din Djarin. But this idea that they're not just thinking forward to the future of Mandalore, of physically retaking the planet, depending on exactly what that means and who will wield the Darksaber and who will they be. But that idea of like, who are we going to be to the rest of the galaxy?
Yes.
Is really, really important. We've just seen the Mandalorians fighting amongst themselves. We've seen the Mandalorians surviving. But if they can come together and be a culture, who are they to the rest of the galaxy? And that line, that motivation for Din and Bo-Katan is important.
Yeah, I really, like I said, I really do believe the season does have this through line, this focus. Sometimes maybe it seems a little blurry or definitely a little loud, like this episode. But I had put that note down of not just a fun little detail, but great. So we all get together. We have the Mandalorian campfire of friendship. Now what? It's important. This is absolutely part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now what? And I think the episode does get us much closer to that. I want to talk about leadership. I also want to talk about some of the great moments of the cultures and what we learned about them. Is there other ideas that you wanted to discuss?
No. Out of that comes probably a lot of my ideas. I was just energized by a lot of the examples along the way of the differences. So that does go into what you're talking about, going through the cultures.
Awesome. Yeah, let's talk about the cultures then. Because man, that's what made me want to rewatch, both in the fun little Star Wars details and the it warmed my heart this morning to be like, yeah, this is I will take so much of this in Star Wars, of the world building from the fun perspective, but also if Star Wars is going to continue to promote the idea that everyone matters, we have to work together, we're stronger together, let's avoid conflict when we can. It's helpful to me to sometimes get down into the details of what do different cultures believe, what do they want, and how are they going to work it out when it's maybe not compatible with one another, you know? Mm-hmm. So there's the big Mandalorian stuff that's, I think in some ways, the most direct sense this show is called The Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. But we're treated to many different cultural perspectives. It's powerful to me that Axe Woes is determined to present their mercenary life as honorable, right? Like he's speechifying in that opening to tell them the Mon Cala or the Quarren captain what's going on, but it's almost like he wants to hear it and he wants his people to hear it, that he's all about honor. And Casca Reeves' line is a little bit of an eye roll, right? When the prince says, "I thought Mandalorians were honorable," and Casca Reeves is like, "We are, kid. All it takes is a few credits." So it seems like Casca is kind of chafing, rolling her eyes at, we're not mercenaries. I guess we're privateers. and Axe Woves is really trying to pump it up about like, yeah, we're loyal. You know, if you pay us, we're gonna do what we're gonna do. And he's trying to make the idea of being a mercenary honorable. Did you feel that? And what did you think about that?
Yeah, no, there's a weird tension, not just with him and Casca, but even just obviously with him and Bo, there's some tension. But there was that line of that's kind of why he left, as Bo wanted to take over a rule, and he left. And I didn't take it immediately as especially when he left, that he had a problem with her leading. That maybe how she saw it. I don't know. That's where I kind of went with it there too. And so yeah, I think he's trying to form what that means. He likes the role of leadership. He says that as much. Of course, you get to sit there and sip coffee while everyone throws balls in the park around you. But yeah, I think he's exploring that as well.
Yeah, and I think that the conflict at the end, we got so much perspective. And what I took from Axe is like, I don't know where he was. He wasn't on the mission where they captured Moff Gideon, right? But it seems like he got the report of like, so this cultist freak Din Djarin got the Darksaber, and Bo-Katan, you didn't even try to kick his ass. You didn't even try to take it from him. You're no leader. Right. That's what it feels like to me, because that seems to be like the part of the born on Mandalore, of Mandalorian blood perspective, that's the part of the culture that's super important to him, right? So I thought that was great. I thought it's been floating around. We've been concentrating on how Mandalorians who are of Mandalore look at the Children of the Watch. It was finally great to hear some just vitriol about Din Djarin not being a real Mandalorian because he doesn't have any blood. I really love that perspective, that contrast. But I thought what was really interesting to me about the story of the Mandalorians in this episode is Bo-Katan is getting closer to what she wants, that Mandalorians are stronger together. Now she's got the Darksaber. Maybe she can make it happen. And this idea that she wants them to be a strong, independent, sovereign nation. But everything hanging over this episode it's called Guns for Hire, Are Mandalorians meant to be warriors? Are they meant to be fighters? Is that the only way they can exist? Is it honorable to be a gun for hire, or do you have to find something honorable to fight for?
Yeah. Maybe this jumps too far ahead in the conversation with you. So, sorry, I'm actually excited because I think there was one thing I was going to say. A question in this episode was like this big thing of Bo getting the blade back. Something I think we figured might happen, right? And I don't know what I wanted out of that. I don't know if I expected or even wanted Din and her to have a knockdown, drag out fight. What, does she kill Din? Like, what was that? He's kill her? That's not going to happen, right? So how do we come out of it? So as we're talking about trying to go forward in cultures, we got this very clearly weapons are a religion. Captain Jack Black Bombardier knows that. That's what he says it. And you get this fight. She challenges him. Fine. As a warrior, I challenge you. Got this great fight. We'll talk about it after the break. But what got her the saber back was compassion, connection, a good deed in a way, which is the honor part of their society, right? So I just, listening to you talk, just elevated that moment for me, where even after 2 viewings, I had some like, okay, it was a clerical error, right? Which is a fun joke to make, but to break it down to what it meant, what puts her in this position was not conquering, it was saving. And that just has a lot more value, but to me, as they're trying to build the society going forward and trying to take what they are and marry it with what they could be.
I love that. I mean, I think that Minds of Mandalore episode, we talked a lot about Bo-Katan and Din having different perspectives and them both benefiting from one another's perspectives. Din's absolute belief that, the legends, the meaning that the culture has poured into the Darksaber is not frivolous and empty. These are ideas that we've made the choice to invest in. They mean something. These ideas, the creed, the way it brings us together. And Bo-Katan also being able to provide Din with like, yeah, but here's the hard reality. You didn't grow up here. You don't know these things, So they had these different perspectives. In that entire episode is them literally Bo-Katan saving Din, but them literally becoming stronger together and benefiting from one another's different perspectives. And I love what you're saying to really, really highlight that. I think there was the tension with the Darksaber is didn't really want it, hasn't seemed to put his back into mastering it a little bit better with it, but never really wanted it, right? And Din, is not a shrinking violet, right? He'll fight, but he is a man of honor. He'll only fight for the right things, and Bo-Katan is his ally. She's only ever helped him, and he's returned the favor, and she's returned the favor, and he's in her debt. And why would he fight her over this? It's not in his greed, or I mean, I guess maybe it is, but in him finally seeing a way forward and going, this fits in the rules, but it also supports my honor. It supports what I believe in. It supports what Bo-Katan is fighting for, stronger together. And we know Din believes it because Din has said again and again that why he believes in the creed is our people are scattered like the stars. The creed is what keeps us together. So it really, really works for me. I understand how just kind of in execution, maybe for some people it feels like you were waiting for the fireworks and then you just handed it to her. But conceptually, it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, like I said, I absolutely up until this podcast recording probably had a little bit of myself rubbing up against that idea of just like I don't know, like Gideon gets it, it's a hot potato. You got now we when you write down your Wikipedia list of rulers of Mandalore, you got to include Spider Droid guy. Like he's officially got the title reign. It was a short title reign, but he got it. And so I had a little bit of that. But now to just really put into what's going on with Bo-Katan from when we meet her, even having we don't know the exact details of her loss of the Darksaber and how Gideon got it, but just what she's struggling with. She's sitting on that throne, going, I'm supposed to be this warrior power. I didn't even deserve it, but who she was makes her deserving of it. Her gut reactions. I'm not turning away from helping Din when Grogu shows up. She shows up, goes out to that ship. Well, finally, let's get rid of this guy. Oh no, something's wrong. Her spirit, her heart, her drive, stronger together. All those things you're talking about. It does thematically sync up in a way that's maybe not as, like you said, the fireworks aren't there, but it's really powerful.
And I think it's possible that the fireworks are still coming, right? That the armor decides to take that. Whatever large conflict we're heading toward, we'll talk a little bit about where things might actually be going. What does retake Mandalore mean? I think there is still a possibility that multiple Mandalorian cultures are like one leader, but maybe the truth we're seeing is Din and Bo-Katan are stronger together, and they should lead together. And Din still isn't quite. Din is acting like a leader, but I don't think he'd say I'm a leader, right? Like, he gave that speech. He suggested a massive change in their culture to go live on Navarro in the sun on his tract of land, right? But he doesn't see himself as a leader, and I think there is still a little bit. It's honoring Bo-Katan. It is what's best, but like that final shot is the two of them, And is that going to become a conflict of can the Mandalorian society change and can they lead together?
Yeah. And beyond just the shipping of it all, which people are certainly having fun, but yes.
Ooh, yeah. A lot of shipping. A lot of shipping.
Look, we got our romance. All we need up top with the captain and the squid. All right.
Hey, and we got Captain Bombardier and the Duchess. Yeah.
That's right. He's my true love.
So a lot of cultural issues about the Mandalorians being raised, and a lot of questions about where that's going to go. I also just wanted to highlight that Plazir 15 itself is this unique culture, right, of robots and more time for art and society and participating in democracy. The beautiful domed cities, which is, I think, great. This is the shot that made everybody think we were getting a flashback to Mandalore in the good old days, right? But I think that was purposeful because it is vision of, could Mandalorian society be like this?
Yes.
Probably not. But it is a place that's, beautiful and pleasant and all that. But then within it, we get all these other cultures of the Ugnaughts and the idea that Din understands their culture, that they pride themselves on their craft, that they value direct, honest speech. I think we get that from the Quarren too. Like, this is the other thing where I keep saying, like, the details are exciting me.
Mm-hmm.
In a different Star Wars show, or episode of Star Wars, it might just be fun background. But the episode starts with that Quarren captain in a cool tank chair, being fed a literal fish cocktail. In a Star Wars movie, that'd just be like, oh, that's a fun background, tip of the iceberg storytelling. But in this episode, it's a part of the heart of it. We're seeing different cultures with different ways of doing things. The Ugnaughts are more practical to the episode, and the droids are, this is huge, right?
Yeah.
When I saw the trailer, I thought it was maybe the droid Gatra, but man, I loved expanding this to see not droids are like, we've had enough organics.
Right.
We're teaming up, but like, we know who we are. We know what we are. We have a culture of our own. And our decision in our culture is, you made us. You have these short, little, pathetic lives. The least we could do is spend a part of our time making things work for you. In the actual line, we don't want to be replaced. We still have a lot to contribute. Human life is so short. They don't ask that much of us. Organic created us. It's the least we can do. It's really turning on its head some of the legitimate discussion and jokes that we as Star Wars fans have made about like how horribly everybody treats 3PO, right?
Yes.
The perspective that droids are like, this is not even all of our identity, because we have droid bars and we hang out and, we flirt and fight over booze, all sorts of things going on in there. Who knows what's going on in the back room? But we want to be of service. That's our culture. How did you feel about that? Is a decades-long Star Wars fan hearing a droid say those things?
Yes, as someone who, again, never really bought droid figures, overlooked them, stepped over them like Kenobi sometimes. Love you, Obi-Wan. No, I really love this, and I loved again. Goes when we keep going on. It's one of these themes. Again, I really am highlighting it, just like from Jack Black's, up front. I'm here to have a good time, and there's no dark shadows. Ugnaughts, this investigation did not uncover anything with them and the droids, and I was really kind of oddly moved about the droid bartender being like, number one, I hear you, which is funny, but two, like, we want to help. We want to move forward and work together too. Like give us that chance. Din's coming in with a lot of droid baggage. Totally understand, maybe, but got to leave it at the door. It's the best way if you can. And for Bo to have that moment of, yes, it could be, but we don't know that they have anything to do with it, or that this particular bartender's the one serving him the Nepenthe with the reprogramming stuff for bad stuff. And so I actually was kind of moved by it, of just like, no. Exactly all the quotes you just said, but just, we're here. We're here with you. We got our droid bar. We're not sure why you're here. We don't serve your kind, but we want to move forward together. So please give us that chance to keep doing that.
Yeah. It was beautiful. And I was just sort of caught up in the plot when I watched it at midnight, and I enjoyed it. But when I rewatched it this morning, I was like, this is some top tier Star Wars. This is adding deeply to the canon and the story and the morality of droids. And I did love that it starts with this tension, and it really felt like it was a direct discussion with the original cantina scene, where like everybody turns at 3PO and R2, like, what the hell are they doing here? Get them out of here, right? And the droids all just looking at the organics like, what's gonna happen here? I also think the droids also support this theme of the season, theme of this episode, of change in the face of trauma, questioning the New Republic, that the New Republic has good intentions, but maybe they are overreacting at some points. When the droid says, the New Republic would send all of us droids to scrap, but here in Plaisir, they're given a second chance, inviting you to question whether the New Republic is moving too fast to just, like, if it touched Imperial, if it touched Separatist, melt it down. And it's also exactly what you're talking about. These droids saying, like, Plaisir 15 is a place of second chances in trying again to work together.
Yeah. Constantly.
So those are my thoughts on culture. Do you want to talk about leadership?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's lead us there.
Yeah. So I think the episode is offers lots of ideas of what does it take to be a leader. Is it physical strength? You have to fight for it, like the Mandalorians, Is it wisdom, which Bo-Katan and Din have, I think? Is it tradition? Is it, these are the rules of my culture. They are immovable. Is it you have to have a laser sword? Or is it democratic will? Should it be the will of the people? There are all those questions raised by these different systems we see. Plausier 15 has a brand new ruling structure that embraces the symbolism, the history, the tradition of royalty, but is also a direct democracy, which is fascinating. Then we already talked about this, but Din having a great rapport with the Ugnaughts is like, that's his moment to kind of step up and be a leader, right? Bo-Katan does a great job with the droids. That's her moment to step up as be a leader. And then Din's like, you're the leader as we're going here to face X-Woves. What are you going to do, right? It was really a moment of Din going like, we've kind of been trading off who's leading on this little investigation. On our well-run mass transit hyperloop to X-Woves, I'm telling you, you're the leader. What are you going to do? It really raised that question to me. And ending with, hey, everyone here agrees Bo-Katan's the leader. She's got the Darksaber. She saw a mythosaur. They don't know that. And to me, that the ending was triumphant, but it was also like the dark cord of the armor. I heard of like, is this going to be cool with the armor? So that was it for me for my thoughts on leadership. I think just by presenting lots of different ideas of what does it take to be a leader, it asked you to ask those questions that I think will be wrestled with in future episodes.
Yeah, I agree with it. And a lot of leadership and trust and faith all kind of go together. And there's, I keep going back to this thing of there was, not that every one of these characters is perfect and every idea is perfect. I don't want that idea to be out there, but like just that it was all sincere. There's a lot of sincerity in this episode all the way through. And that's to me one of the best ways to lead. It's not always something you can do. And the only one truly hiding something is Hellgate. That's the point. Like you said, it's pretty much on the surface. And I think wonderfully delivered by Christopher Lloyd. The Empire. I mean, he's Christopher Lloyd to his core, but he hit the right tones for me on that. And I think there's some questions going forward. I don't trust the armor as far as I can throw that helmet if I was to yank it off there. All right. Like I can't wait for that confrontation. I can't wait for, other people. Moff Gideon, I might have some thoughts. He hasn't. So still some questions to be answered. But as you go, again, this final college term paper of cultures, leadership, how to move forward, how to lead, how to combine. Because it's easy to say, you saw the mythosaur, you got the mythic sword, yay. This episode had a lot of logistics through it. That's not as fun, but I think they wrapped it up in this real fun way. We'll recognize you. We'll petition the New Republic. We'll do this. We'll do that. I think it laid the groundwork for the big change coming.
Yeah, and almost a funny level of tension between the things that Star Wars can be. People who grew up with the original trilogy really like Star Wars being mythic, right? And then the prequels and a lot of the storytelling after that really got into the nuts and bolts and in the details. And I love this contrast between like Bo-Katan has the mythic sword. She might be able to ride the ancient beast of legend. Also, she needs someone to petition the New Republic to recognize the sovereignty. It really is both.
Totally. Yeah, no, and you do have a great shot there at the end. It's also in the park, in Central Park, where literally two Mandalorians are playing catch. I loved it.
Yeah, I gotta look closer for the Mandalorians playing catch. Yeah, that's great.
It's one of the establishing shots. It's great.
Okay,
that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. It did look a little like definitely some Mandalorian cosplay. That was very fun.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
It was a group meeting up in the park. Did you want to touch base at all on the title? What was important to you about this one being called Guns for Hire?
Well, for me, what was important is what is that, especially at the beginning when you're seeing X-Woves and you're getting what's going on. That term has it's a group with no home, right? Doesn't mean they don't have an ethos or their own kind of honor, but they're out and about. They're untethered unless you pay them. That type of idea. Seems very simple, but I carried that in this episode. This is about a group of folks focused obviously on Bo and Mando. Not that they haven't, they know who they are. They're choosing side. This isn't DJ in Last Jedi going, nah, I'm just here. I'm just playing both sides. It isn't that, but it is this. There's just such of no one's locked down. It is this constant state of movement and no one home, no one place, sleeping under a tree on a rock type of vibe. And that set me up for what the journey was to me.
Yeah, I think for me, what I really liked about it is it attached back to our beginning with Din is the bounty hunter, right? And he's doing it to provide for the foundlings and his covert and all that. But there's that question of, will he ever go back to it? And some real tension about whether being a gun for hire is honorable to a Mandalorian. Bo-Katan says pretty straightforward, like, I don't do that. Right. But then when she is offered a mutually beneficial exchange, she's like, fine, well, that's honorable. So raising this question of, is being just a gun for hire honorable, I think is important to the future of the Mandalorians. And I think helps continue to raise this question of, great, the Mandalorians are working together, they're surviving. If they survive and if they thrive and if they got nothing to do but play ball in the park, right? Go for some steam baths near the lava flats on Navarro. What is a warrior culture with no one to be at war with? Would Paz Vizsla look at the culture of this planet of Plazir 15 and go, what? They just have time for art and to decide how to vote on every little thing? Disgusting, right? Could Paz Vizsla live with that,
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very fun. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for a longer look at the big ideas. We're going to take a quick break. Ken, do you have any other big idea things you want to talk about?
No, let's get going.
Okay, let's hit that button, take a break, and head into canon, lore, action, all sorts of stuff. Back in a moment. And we are back to continue our discussion of Chapter 22 of The Mandalorian, Guns for Hire. There was some really fun and intriguing canon and lore connections and some things that as soon as they were said in the episode, Ken, I don't know if you were like me, but I was like, oh boy, that's really interesting. But, the Twitter threads, I can feel them. I can feel them already.
There was a lot of that once that Nokia phone rang. I was like, I might need to stay off Twitter. Thank God for Star Wars Celebration. We can just go celebrate.
Yeah. And the Nokia phone, it's a style thing, right? That's the Nokia phone is to now as the Ewoks are just teddy bears was to 1983. So it will always be, in my opinion.
So it shall be.
What I was really affected by and what I want to start with in the canon and lore is the Darksaber rabbit hole. I'd missed that theory you were talking about from one of our specific listeners that this had been that Bo-Katan had technically won it. But I do remember some theories. Maybe we got some questions back in the day of jumping into this. Din says she defeated the enemy that defeated me. Did she not earn it? And Exo has to be like, yeah, she did. So now, did your head start spinning with, how would I track that? Like, well, Kamal had it here, and Sidious defeated him.
Right.
In the Clone Wars episode, The Lawless. So, did it belong to Sidious? Who defeated Sidious? Well, was it Darth Vader? But Luke defeated Darth Vader, but he defeated Vader before Vader defeated Sidious, and that's just one example. And I know people are typing up long threads. I think there was one back in the day that followed that chain of like, actually, technically, doesn't Luke Skywalker?
Yeah. No,
So how do you feel about all that?
I'm going to wait for the video that Alex is probably working on in a London hotel right now. I'm talking, I always, I cross-reference pro wrestling a lot. I love looking at a history of the title, right? You can just, Bruno Sammartino dropped it here, and there's always like someone who had it for 9 days, but they didn't make it to TV, so it's not like official, but they had it. Like, it's fun. It's weird. So I had that vibe with this. I was like, okay. So to your point of like, I hadn't thought of that angle of like, well, I mean, Sidious, he got the win. He got the win once. So what did he do? It's kind of fun. And it's not, I don't think, even if Sidious got it and was like, I don't need this, I already got lightsabers. I got two. it doesn't devalue the myth or the purpose of the Darksaber to me, but it is wild to track it.
No, it's really, really fun canon to track through who, and at the end of the day, Kenobi defeated Maul. So is that anything? Can you do anything with that? And anyway,
headline reads: Scrimshaw tries to make Kenobi have Darksaber.
That's the thing. I think there's going to be a good-hearted discussion, and then I think there's going to be some adamant table pounding. Turns out this is who really owns the Darksaber. Yeah. What I think is important to the actual lore is not just you defeat the enemy, right? Who is technically carrying it now, but that you want it and that you take it and that you acknowledge it, right? City has never wanted it and never made a thing of it, right? He probably doesn't have respect for that tradition, right?
Totally.
So I think the ownership is a part of the ownership is claiming it, right? If somebody came to Luke Skywalker with this theory of like, okay, we've been learning a lot, and it turns out you own this, and like, no, I don't. I think the owner has to want it and claim it, and I think in my head canon right now, that's why it isn't a weird, twisty. Well, turns out Luke Skywalker owns it. It is because he doesn't want it. He wouldn't claim it.
Yeah. No, I think that has a lot to do with it, and the one I'm most curious about is the switch from Bo-Katan to Moff Gideon, and how and the why of it and all that kind of stuff. Her first go around with it.
Yeah, I kind of really take it as he physically defeated her and took it,
which is why
old Mandalore.
Yeah, which is why she might have this downtrodden view of herself, right? I lost it. I wasn't powerful enough to keep it. And she's that's not what it's about, obviously.
In Bo-Katan has always been somebody who struggles to walk multiple paths, right? And she didn't want Sabine to just hand it to her in Rebels, but she was trying to embrace the new, and then beating herself up because she didn't earn it. So and here she is again going, okay, technically I did earn it this time. Fair enough. Yeah, you found a loophole, Dan.
I did. Yeah.
All right, trucking along here. I do want to talk canon-wise about meeting a Confederacy of Independent Systems true believer. We get a Count Dooku name drop. We learn that the nano droids that are causing this infection in the Nepenthe originated with some Techno Union experiments. So not just a bunch of great prequel era and Clone Wars era name drops, but I think for me, Ken, some real meaning. We've often talked about what is the story of the Separatists. People have asked, why does the crawl of Revenge of the Sith say heroes on both sides? And for me, the story has always been the Separatist military, the people we see actively acting, the true leaders are Sith Lords, vicious warriors like General Grievous, who blows up hospitals and kills for pleasure in dominance, and a bunch of extremely greedy corporations who do not care who they hurt in the name of profit. And then there are people who had legitimate systems with the Republic that was not functioning well, and I think they got sold a bill of goods that's what Dooku was doing for them. That's what all of these, the corporate alliance and the Techno Union, Trade Federation, that's what they're doing for them, is making this better world. But I think it was always a lie. I think everybody involved in the Confederacy of Independent Systems were making a better galaxy for domination and profit.
Yeah.
But there were people who had legitimate beliefs that they suckered. That's my opinion. What's your take on it, and how do you feel about seeing it in this era in this way?
Yeah, it's always fascinating because I think there's always it's always important to try to understand the needs of people in Star Wars. It might be planets or cultures or communities here, but the planets basically, right? What are your needs? What are your needs being met? And often you might find that maybe they're not, and so it's like, all right, cool. How do you deal with that going forward? Even if I don't live on your planet, so I don't understand what you need. I'm urban, you're rural. What are your needs? And they might be different. I might not understand them. But then when you feel as though your needs are not getting met and how people come to you, it's so easy for a Dooku to come to you and go, your needs aren't being met, right? Yeah, I agree with you. Here's some examples. So what are you going to do about it, right? That's what Dooku's asking in the shadows. What are you going to do about it? We're going to do about it because whatever you do, if it helps me get my power, because I don't give a damn about it for you. I really don't. I don't care about your needs. I care about my power, but I'm going to stoke it up. That's how I see the separatists. And that's how I see it more. Growing up, and it seems weird to say growing up, but I was a lot younger when Attack of the Clones was out, so I've grown up. They were the bad guys. They were the bad guys. They were set up that way. It was, but I really don't think that's what George was saying. It's just, that was easy to go, we're fighting this, Republic, separatists, don't like them battle droids, Roger, let's destroy them. And so you're not seeing it. You're not accounting for the Sith Lords of it all. And so that's why I see it more now. And to see this episode kind of highlight that kind of stuff. And this season, and I see sometimes even with the New Republic, it gets to, I don't know, weird areas with me where they do some drive-by swipings of the New Republic, even in this episode, that again are things where you go, yeah, it's probably a concern, but don't write them off yet. You know what I mean? That's all what I take out of this, and it keeps growing, not just with this, but Bad Batch and all that kind of stuff. We're seeing that a lot. And it makes the heroes on both sides thing from the Crawl and Revenge of the Sith have more meaning to me of what it actually meant. Yeah,
and I mean, we get to see that with Mina Bonteri and the council and that, and Dooku, I think, had a firm control over that. And hey, well, we saw it when Mina Bonteri almost tried to stop fighting and go back to negotiations. Hey, what happened to Mina Bonteri? And some Sith Lord stuff happened to Mina Bonteri. I love what you're saying. I think is extremely insightful. I love the idea of talking about things in terms of needs being met. And I think just like happens in the real world throughout many, many histories, people have legitimate concerns, and a charming leader comes in and instead of saying, here is my ideas of how to legitimately fix and address those problems, instead the charming leader says, you know whose fault that is? Let's go attack them.
Let's go get them. Let's go get them. Yeah.
Just focus on the anger. Those are the people who failed you. And I think it does. It suckers people, and it makes it feel like you're being seen, and it makes it feel like your problems are going to be solved. But like, what did Dooku say? What did Dooku offer? Or did Dooku just offer, it's the Republic's fault, let's tear him down? Yeah. And then I'll actually help you with the things you legitimately need, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Powerful. And I do think this was this episode to me was a win for the New Republic. There were some moments of questioning it. But hey, he was Captain Jack Black Bombardier was a truly reformed Imperial, right? Who's making a difference. And yep, there's some limitations put on their society, but this society is working together to find a way around it.
Yes, no, okay. I stop and highlight that. I apologize, everyone. I like Jack Black. I apologize, so I'm defending this character. But no, I thought that's what it really represented to me was this. Was exactly what you're talking about. This idea of the amnesty program, which seemed awkward and weird and stifling at times, right? It seemed, but the purpose of it, the goal of it. This is an example of why it's there and how no one's being tossed out. The droids apparently were going to be smelted and sent off to Carthon, but not Jack Black and not Bombardier.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one of the fun things in terms of canon that Carthan Chop Shops mentioned that we saw Miggs Mayfield being rescued from. And I think it's fist pumping when it's a bunch of, TIE fighters being taken apart. But then when it's a droid and a bar going, I don't want to be sent there.
Yeah.
You question the New Republic, and it ties so well to Pershing saying all this equipment is perfectly good and you're just tossing it, which I think is, to me, like the core of that episode. I think that's what breaks Pershing, of like, they're doing the same thing to me. My skills are still perfectly good and they're tossing me out. So continuing questioning of the New Republic in this episode, but I think a victory for the amnesty program.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. I think so too.
Awesome. The Quarren and Mon Cala history we've touched on. There's ample storytelling in the Clone Wars during that era. There's some great storytelling even in books about the Resistance versus the First Order era. I did go online to try to remind myself to Wikipedia of what was the Quarren's role in the Galactic Civil War. And I think it's a little bit open, because all that Wikipedia says is that the Quarrens and the Mon Cala worked together during the Galactic Civil War. It's like, cool. And then I clicked on that, and the evidence that Wikipedia is providing is that in the video game Battlefront 2, you can be a Quarren who is a heavy gunner. Like, I love Battlefront 2. I think I've played a heavy gunner as a Quarren.
Yeah.
I don't know if that locks in the storytelling for the Quarren's behavior during the reign of the Empire.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But you know what? I'll take it, I guess.
I'll take it. Yeah. Great stuff. Let's go to Queel. Queel is invoked. I have spoken is used. How did you feel about that? Did you feel that there's a possibility that those Ugnaughts knew Queel, or was it simply that Din was invoking being a friend to an Ugnaught and speaking to them in their own cultural manner?
That's a great question. I think my first viewing was that they worked with Queel. Yeah. We haven't talked since retired, but oh gosh, how's he doing? That's how I took it. I think the second time around, I took it more of a general sense of I knew this Ugnaught and I knew his name, and I say, just the fact that he said I have spoken, that they're kind of like, oh, I got it. You understand us. So maybe somewhere in the middle lies the actual truth, or go with your heart. Maybe one of them's Quill's cousin. I don't know, but I take the general sense more.
Yeah, that's the way I took it as well. Of like, this is somebody who is coming down here, and instead of just yelling at them or rolling their eyes, is like, I am a friend to you. I consider you friends. I consider this person, this Ugnaught, a friend, and then everything from there would totally just understanding their culture and respecting it, like Din made clear in the episode.
Yeah.
We don't need to run down every alien and droid in the background. There was a lot of that, but there's a couple fun things. I thought it was great in the dinner table roll call that there were some of the Frog Ladies people. And there was just a scurrier on the table. How did you we've seen them on Tatooine before, but how did you feel that there was just a rodent running around on the table?
I was raised with pet rats, and I'm used to this. I used to have my rat just, kind of burrow around my neck in my shirt collar, just sleep there. It would pee on you. It was great. It was a fun time. So I had no problem. It worked. That whole scene, I love that dinner scene. That's definitely a pause and look scene.
Oh yeah, no, Rodian, Salston, Athorian, Bith, Ishi Tib, a lot of great.
I actually kind of said to myself, I was like, oh, this is where all the aliens from Andor went.
Yep, they are really building up that model shop. We got them. We're putting them in there. We're putting them in there. Modeling costume shop. The droid bar roll call. There's a lot of great stuff in there. There's the Rick series droid that drove the rickshaw and attacked the clones. The RX series droids. From Disney, like R3X, who is now the DJ in Oga's Cantina. Of course, originally the pilot on the original Star Tours, RX-24, EV series droid. Great to see the droid type from Force Awakens. Maybe the same droid, the BU-4D burly Loden droid.
Yeah.
And great to see the reprogrammed ITO in the droid morgue.
Yeah, in the droid morgue with the great Jen Colbert played that lab tech. She's a wonderful stand-up comic, been around for years, but I used to do shows with her at the Improv years ago, and made me realize I need to work at being a better comic. She's a unique presence on stage. Great to see her. I loved everything about it. I love that the chef droid just gets. They're everywhere now.
Yeah,
I think one probably murdered. I don't know what. Turn it off.
I think there was some. I think some throats were opened.
Yes, assaulting going on. Yes.
Yes. I like that. I like to now picture Commissioner Hellgate just having droids rip open people's furniture and like not enough. Got to escalate. Yeah. No, that COO droid is they got one. It's gonna pop up now.
Yeah.
Moving on to more canon stuff. Nepenthe is new to Star Wars, but that's about it that it's new to. Nepenthe, according to Wikipedia, is a possibly fictional medicine for sorrow, a drug of forgetfulness mentioned in ancient Greek literature and Greek mythology, depicted as originating in Egypt. It is referenced in Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. In particular, a dangerous spark to relight the Star Wars versus Star Trek wars. Nepenthe was featured prominently in the first season of Picard. It was the title of the episode, I believe, and it was the planet that Riker and Troy were living on in retirement. So if you watch Star Trek and Star Wars, you're like, Nepenthe. That's where Riker lived. Did you have any Nepenthe thoughts or feelings?
I did not, other than a beautiful word that sounded vaguely familiar, like I might have rolled some dice to drink it before, but I love that connection, actually.
Yeah, I love that idea of it is medicine for sorrow, and that's what the droids are getting together and enjoying. Beautiful.
Yeah.
My last canon thing is one that I'm so curious to see how you feel about. There is yet another phrase that is from the Mandoverse that is being used again, I think, in an effort to make it seem as though it is definitely a big part of the galaxy. The Cad Bane quote from the Hellgate, if that isn't the Quokta calling the Stifling slimy.
Yes.
How you doing? How you doing with that, Ken?
I think I currently like it, right? I think I currently like it. Yes, I've expressed some Star Wars swear words sometimes stand out a little bit too much for me. You think Jack Black takes you out of the story. I think, Carabas sometimes does for me. Not from Zeb, by the way, but I'm good with it. I like it. It was a fun callback.
Yeah, it worked for me. It was creepy when Cad Bane said it, and it was fun for me to imagine.
Yes.
Christopher Lloyd going, okay. What does this one mean? What are these words? All right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Any other canon or lore thoughts from you?
No. Just love it. I mean, anytime you get a Dooku name check in 2023, it's going to be fun and exciting.
Thrilled. Let's talk action. Maybe a little less action in this episode, which is, I think, maybe one of the things that people are responding to. How did you feel about the action? Do you have any favorite beats?
You had a great fight there at the end. There's nothing wrong with that. I put down an action. The Hyperloop pods were just great action themselves. Speed. It's like a fun Disneyland ride. I'm counting that as action to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I usually try to keep my actions to combat set pieces, but I had to add the Quarren and Mon Cala tentacle touching.
It's action. It's action.
It's action. I think it was intriguing to me on multiple levels. I don't mean like that intriguing. No, it's I think the world building, the canon of it, like we talked about, it's important to the episode. It's important to this era of time. They even say we're trying to move forward after the war pretty directly, but it's also just that's a Bryce Dallas Howard special of let's take the weirdest aliens we can find and create true tenderness and emotion. And I feel like the Quarren's tentacles reaching out. That was a Bryce Dallas Howard special.
Absolutely. She finds just a certain warm spirit in everything she brings to Star Wars so far. I mean, from the Sorgan episode and beyond, I think that's one of the things people react to. And what I love too, I think even I might feel guilty of well, Bryce is a mother and she brings this. I'm not saying that to limit her. She goes so far beyond that here to love, connection, warmth. Grogu has some wonderful moments in this episode. Just some wonderful laughter, joy. She is able to bring that in to Star Wars while also handling, the armor and Paz and Din in a sci-fi world. She handles it all so well. Racing speed, the N1, all that stuff. So love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't want to limit her to that by any means, but it is clearly something that's look beyond that. They're weird fish people. What's the emotion? Emotion? And it is very good at that.
That's what she does. And you're so right. That's it. That's the skill.
Some other actions for me. I loved them just tearing through the city, chasing that B2 battle droid. And I love the terrifying Terminator run that it was doing, but in particular, didn't crashing through the window and sliding on the floor. Leading up to that Bo-Katan double blaster pose hero shot. That was one of my favorite moments.
Yeah, no, it was great. I love the run so curious how they put that together. You know, it was this stunt performer, and then they put the B2 over and whatever. It just was. There was one particular run around the corner. I saw a human in a good way. Where I was like,
yeah,
oh, that's great. Yeah.
Me too. It's like that was some good mocap or CGI because it did look like that droid could slip. I also did like, I think it was really good to see Din wield the Darksaber to make it more prominent in our mind, and I really liked the chop on the Morg droid.
Yeah, I like that. Right down the middle.
Yeah. Anything else for you, or is it all in the big Bo-Katan versus Axwell fight?
Yeah, it's in the fight. It's in the fight, but it's all not surprised. It's two Mandos fighting. It's very Clone Warsy, animated side of Star Wars, which is great, and including some great beats of them missing all that stuff. Bo-Katan using a jump pack to drop kick, just like she earlier used the jump pack to leap over the debris, which I thought was great. If I have a jetpack, I'm doing that all the time. You should see me in an airport with a jetpack. I'm just going to push right to Axwell's rocket pack spear. A lot of wrestling moves with jetpacks is in rocket packs is what that fight was about. But I'll say this, as fun as it was, once he finally got to it, it wasn't the highlight maybe I thought it would have been, and I mean that in an okay, good way, where it's just like there was so many other things going on in this episode. It was like, oh, plus we got to fight.
Yeah. I liked the actual fight, and it really did remind me of Clone Wars. I had a little bit of time to kill before Mandalorian because I frankly I hadn't had food all day, and I sat down with a frozen pizza at 10:30 and like I want to stay in Star Wars mode. Yeah. What am I going to watch? So I watched the Clone Wars episode, The Lawless, that's got some great Bo-Katan action. So I was totally in Bo-Katan action mode. In a lot of it is that sort of Clone Wars of like, it is blasters and ropes and flamethrowers and jetpacking toward each other. But then they always get up close and they knife and they fist.
Yeah, great use of the shield too, yeah.
Yeah, so I really liked just that general vibe. And I think the other thing is I felt the stakes of the action, cutting to that shot of Grogu kind of leaning back like, and seeing kind of both sides tense, wanting to get into it, but needing to hold back. And this season has really made me connect with Bo-Katan, and I felt it when there was fear of her losing, getting punched. So I think my favorite moment was when she is thrown off the ship and then uses the rope to pull Axe down.
Oh yeah, no, that was great, good coordination too.
Yeah, good job, Bo-Katan. All right, let's move on to comedy and whimsy. I think this episode wanted there to be a lot of comedy and whimsy, and fully acknowledge that it might not land for all viewers, but there was a lot that landed for me. What landed for you, Ken?
Overall, just I mentioned the joy of Grogu and the Duchess and Bombardier's reaction to Grogu, but just Grogu kind of reacted to their love. There was when she says, "Oh, we forget the exact line, but he's my and we fell in love." And there's a cut to Grogu, and he laughs. And he's so joyful, and even him using the Force to help her get that all the points there. The quad blast, I've never seen. I love all that. So Grogu is at the center of the whimsy of this episode. Even her waving goodbye to him, I was on board for it. Again, might not be for everyone. You might be pointing at the screen and going, but I don't know, that's Lizzo. I can't. I don't know. It just hit me in the right spot.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear, because I think that is the point of like, what are we fighting for? Joy, and
Joy.
This is people who are finding it. They're working together. They at a table having a banquet. They're playing games. It's great. I liked a lot of the world building. I loved the Quarren's tank chair and fish cocktail.
That was really great. Yeah.
Great, fun, weird world building. I did like Bombardier's first line there. Mandalorians, I hope you like secretions.
Yeah.
Take a little sip. Maybe a little much for me, but I really liked I hope you like secretions. And I love that world building. They're not just eating things off a plate. The whole table is working together, sucking out of a space fishbowl.
Absolutely.
Great world building. And I also thought that there was some jokes that got to the sort of the tension of like the Nokia phone is on purpose because it is the warriors going into a happy bouncy place. And I thought that line where Space Lizzo, where the Duchess says, "Hey, can I hold him?" And Din says he doesn't take kindly to strangers, and Grogu flips for fish and snuggles.
Yeah.
To me, that's again one of those moments where, like, that's the episode telling you what it is. It knows these parts are bouncy, fun, joyful, silly, and again, understand not everyone landed for me, but that one did, because it was about the contrast between those worlds.
Yeah. Again, I highlight Bombardier's line, "Join us, come, it's a party." That's what that part of that was. And it never moved from that.
Yeah. Any other individual moments for you?
A couple lines. Din saying Ugnaughts always seem so sure of themselves was just really, I thought that was funny. And it made me, a lot of this episode, Quill, obviously, but a lot of this episode, seeing Ugnaughts working, seeing them having coffee at the break table, just made me want to go spend more time on Cloud City to see what that was like over there.
I really love the Ugnaughts. I love just the full on hair that the main Ugnaught had. I loved it when Din said, "We know that Ugnaughts are considered the hardest working species in the galaxy," and there's that grunted agreement and head nods. You know,
We are.
yeah. I'm sure many people have had many experiences, so I'm not saying it's unique, but to me, that spoke to a part of the Midwestern culture that I'm from, where you could get a lot of people working hard, taking a break, having their morning omelets, dressed in flannel, and get that kind of, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I loved it.
Really, really enjoyed that, and thought it was funny and super respectful to the Ugnaughts. I also like the droids misbehaving montage. In particular, seeing some B1 comedy of just ripping open those boxes.
Yes. Everything with the B1. I want to flip out of the droid bar for a second. Even the doc, boss there, the battle droid. You and I have mentioned this before. Maybe we'll mention it again. But to be there in attendance at the panel in 2019 and have just Favreau say, I'm not a huge fan of the prequels, but Dave's working on me. That moment, you and I could just compare it to so many moments in Mando, especially season 3, and I wonder what that John would say, because these scripts certainly hadn't been written yet. You've got Matthew Wood doing battle droid humor. Amazing to me. I loved everything about it, especially because you and I followed the plight of the battle droids in the Clone Wars and the Rebels and other animated shows. They got a huge kick out of that.
No, there's a part of me who's watching this episode is like, Filoni got him.
He got him.
Then he's like, I know you're an original trilogy kid and you were expecting X, Y, or Z, but here's what they're really about. Here's the ideas. Here's why they went. Like, it just really feels like Favreau is diving into the ideas and the world building of the prequels, and really putting them down on the timeline and going, how do they affect everything else, as well as embracing the whimsy, which is great. Speaking of which, I almost wanted to include it in action, but it's more comedy. Just, I love that Din is so honorable, so thoughtful, but also just like, can I punch it? Is his first instinct, and just kicking the droids to see which one will react poorly. Hilarious. And then my favorite B1 line was when they left running after the B2, saying, "You should have left him alone."
Yeah, maybe not wrong, but
Yep. Any other moments for you?
A couple of Bombardier has a great line. "I have a feeling you hated me." I like that. "Nobody leaves. A blue protocol droid tries to slink out," which I took as an episode that does respect droids. It really, keeps some of that C-3PO protocol droid is slagging on. Mention the politics, Bo-Katan lives, all those lines there. I have one other big final one to end, but those are some lines I loved.
No, I love that the blue protocol droid trying to leave. I like the description of what Nepenthe is. It is a viscous lubricant that protects against mechanical wear while delivering program refreshing subparticles. Not quite as high as the client line about the libations that celebrate the closing of a shared narrative. But I might try to memorize that line and use it to order a drink at a bar and see how that goes.
We'll try that in London.
Yeah, Grogu using the Force to help the Duchess cheat was also fun, and I think good to keep his Force use present. That's it for me, though. So, what is your last one, Ben?
This isn't comedy. This is whimsy to me. They pass by on the street, and there's a collection of all white grav scooters. And I just thought that was they are part of Star Wars, whether you want to believe it or not. These ones are all kind of, maybe their colors fit more into this world. We get it, but grav scooters exist.
Maybe this is the planet they ordered them from.
Maybe.
The Tatooine youth. Maybe this is where they got them from.
Yeah, so love that.
I did not notice that, so thank you for pointing it out. Now I am excited for my next rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to touch on?
No. The one big question I had was the Darksaber passing at the end, and this episode, just the discussion kind of took that question away from me. So there you go. I think we've touched on all the things of we get it. This one's certainly not for everyone, and not one that I would, if I was sitting down to make someone love Star Wars, might not be one of the first choices. I totally get it, but at the same time, the spirit is there.
Yeah. No, I very much agree with that. I think for me, this episode was just rich with world building and design. So a couple things that I just wanted to shout out. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love the redressed stormtroopers in the palace. Mm-hmm. They don't have helmets, but they do have the armor, and they're redressed as almost like, medieval knights with their tunics and their capes.
Yeah.
I love them. Absolutely love them.
Yeah, Grogu's Sir Grogu now, right? So yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
that I'm very curious to see if that comes back up. And I just got to shout out design wise. I love the Duchess's weird floating energy flower.
Oh,
go for it.
No, that was just beautiful. That was beautiful.
It was just like the designers going like, okay, we want to evoke a Naboo-like level of pomp. There's history here. There has been royalty here, but now, like Naboo, there's still royalty, and they still have this tradition, but they're democratically elected. So it really does tie to Naboo. How can we Padme this up? And going like, here's a really different idea. Somehow there's a floating energy flower behind her.
And some wonderful cosplay opportunities. And in chatting with our buddy Ken Plume, he said, look, there's a lot of, this episode put a lot of cosplay opportunities for people of different shapes and sizes, and that's not a bad thing in Star Wars at all. I love that. And this episode celebrated everyone as they are, and I can't wait to see. Maybe it won't be time for London, but the cosplayers work so fast, so maybe by Sunday we'll see some Duchess outfits, but and Jack Black too. I would wear that. That would fit well on me and my shape and my beard. So I loved all that. The design stuff. This episode, you could just see the Doug Changs of the world and Doug Chang himself, everyone involved, just having a ball designing this episode.
Yeah. To say we George Lucas has always cared about world building, about culture building, about making these civilizations feel real. Let's knock it out of the park. And I think they did.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to cosplay Duchess, and wants to make me an energy flower costume, I'd be happy to walk behind cosplay just that part, in support of all the Duchesses out there. Let's talk about predictions or hopes for next week. I slotted this in here, Ken, because I want to be sure to discuss it, because I think I've seen people bringing it up, and I do understand the question. They talk about retaking Mandalore throughout the show in the season, and they talk specifically about how the fleet will really help retake Mandalore. And I have seen the question of retake Mandalore from what? So where do you go with that? Do you think that Bo-Katan is responding to the fact that I have physically been there? It's overrun with the Alzamites. That spider guy is emblematic of the fact that the planet has probably now been overrun by different strange, monstrous, unknowable things. Do you think that's where Bo-Katan is coming from, or do you think that the show just hasn't told us a bit of information yet?
I think there's a bit of information missing. I think whether you believe Gideon's out there or not, I'm talking about if you're a character in the story, you got to imagine that maybe there's some belief that there's still someone you have to defeat to take it. So whether it's down on the ground, like you're describing with the inhabitants of it now, holding on to it might be part of it. Like retaking Mandalore might also mean we got to make sure no one is upset that we're back, and holding on to it might be part of it as well. But I think there's, to me, some information not yet revealed.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility that we haven't been told something yet, or if it's just we are Mandalorians and we are trained to expect resistance and conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever is going to encounter us there, we need to be ready for. Maybe they feel like they need the fleet, not just to retake it, but to rebuild it, right? To
could be
replenish it, that kind of thing.
Indeed.
So who knows? I think in terms of predictions or hopes, I think that fleet, getting the fleet back is, I think we are gearing up to a larger spectacle of an ending as Moff Gideon attacks the Mandalorians, and we'll see if their alliances can hold. I feel like sort of thematically and big battle, I feel like that's where we're headed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that.
All right, we are going to close out this episode. So, hey, we can get on a plane. We are going to slide under a 2-hour episode of the Mandalorian Report as we close with one of our favorite topics. What action figures or merch would we want inspired by this episode? Besides your Bombardier costume, Ken, what would you like?
Bombardier and Duchess 2-pack would be great in any scale. I do want the droid bar. We've been waiting for the droid bar. It's one of the last kind of trailer shots, right? That's there. So give me one of those. You can make it 3 3/4. I'm thinking like I have the Endor bunker 3 3/4 they released years ago with the ATSD, some Ewoks, some Rebels, that kind of thing. Yeah, give me that. But the droid bar.
Yeah, they've made the Navarro Cantina. They haven't made the school version yet. But hey, I would love a resistor bar playset. But if we can't get that yet, I am in love with that blue protocol droid, Ken.
Love it.
That protocol droid was not just blue; that was a special blue, and they got to do some comedy. I deeply need an action figure of that blue protocol droid, and I would like to continue the collection of actors who it's fun that they're in Star Wars. So I would love a Christopher Lloyd Commissioner Hellgate action figure, but in particular, I would love it if the accessory was a large Count Dooku poster that he keeps on his wall.
A fan one, kind of like Anakin's pod race poster. Yeah, I like that.
Yep, a propaganda of like Dooku will show the way kind of poster that he kisses before bed every night.
He was robbed, I tells you.
All right. You want to let people know where they can find us?
You can find us at the Excel Center. That's where you're going to find us the next few days. It's going to be a lot of fun here as we had to start a celebration. So you're going to want to follow along as we have updates, reels, shorts, everything, tweets, pictures of frozen pizzas. We find it, I already found a pizza joint near there, Joseph. We're going to have some pizza. Ooh. It's going to be good. On Twitter at Force Center Pod, Instagram, Facebook is Force Center Podcast. I always say we're on Hive Social. We're not too active there right now, so that's probably not where we'll be doing some updates. But if you want to follow us, that's a spot. And don't forget that you also can follow us on YouTube. Subscribe over there so you don't miss a video or anything that we post. We'll have some gear, so we're going to do some episodes. Joseph has posted the schedule update, so follow along there. Podcast available, a lot of spots on Acast, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and more. Just search, you'll find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. And of course, you can support us directly, as so many of you have for a while, and so many of you are joining us at patreon.com/Force Center. Follow me at Napzok. Go to my website, Napzok.com. I am highlighting my own YouTube channel, which I'm putting more content on there, including game streams. So you can hear the one that was me and Ken. And Brian Ward joined on and played with us from Midnight Nass, his new YouTube channel. So it was a lot of fun. So check that out. YouTube, that's my name. That's all I need to know. Joseph, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw. I am on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Mastodon. Hopefully a lot of fun stuff from London. Maybe I'll do some not unboxing of action figures that I buy there. We'll see how much time I have. You can also check out my YouTube channel. There's a lot of stand-up comedy. There's some short films, a lot of fun stuff on that. You can just search for Joseph Scrimshaw on YouTube. And like Ken said, I think a great summary of this episode. I want to be sure that we put it out there. I think this season of Mandalorian is different. I think it is expanding its palette. I think it's expanding what it's covering. I think the show did start out a little bit more like, let's focus in on this lone hunter, and now it's lone wolf and cub, these two against the galaxy, and it's getting bigger. And I think it is getting brighter. And I definitely understand if people are wrestling with that. But I really do feel like the ideas are really exciting. The world building is really exciting. And if you are interested in that kind of stuff, digging in, it has a lot to offer. So I know this episode is a little bit more, perhaps controversial. So I wanted to put that positive spin out there while also recognizing how people feel. That is it for myself, for Ken, for that beautiful blue protocol droid. This has been the Mandalorian Report.